Hey guys, vacuum collector and fixer here. So I have this Hoover fold away motor. There you go. And I have the machine taken apart. And I got this machine at my local Goodwill. I believe I got it for $6, $6 or $7, I can't remember. And I remember taking it apart and I cleaned out the whole machine. And I never was able to take apart the motor. Something kept me from taking it apart. Now, this machine runs great, but when it winds down, there's a very, very minor dry sound to it. So obviously we have a little bit of bearing problems. So I have my bearing puller here, and before this piece right here, this little cover that was sitting right there, was so tight. Even after removing the two torque screws, this was on very tight. So I just put my bearing puller on there. It took about a minute, but I was able to get this off, and now I'm going to get these bearings removed. I actually have the brushes, which on this motor, the brushes are actually mounted down here, which is interesting. This is my second vacuum cleaner that actually has a motor like this, because you can see the commutator is down in there, not up here. Almost looks like the motor is backwards. And you can see, yeah, there's some really bad rust marks right there. But another thing that I found interesting, if you look at the date code on this, it is the end right there. I believe that is 2007, if I'm reading that correctly, which I'm pretty sure I am. But the base, which has the serial number down there, it says this was made in 2006, and this is actually a very late example of a fold-away, because the fold-aways were discontinued in 2006, and this motor right there says 2007, so someone has been into this machine, and I believe this was replaced, because it wouldn't make sense for us to have a motor that is a year newer than the machine was made. So, and I guess that explains why there was a longer screw in the housing when it wasn't supposed to be there. So, very interesting. This was replaced with the correct motor. This is a fold-away motor, so I find that interesting. I'm wondering if what happened to the original motor, because it would have only been a year old. So I just found that interesting. I'm gonna try to remove this off camera, and we'll be right back. Okay, so I managed to remove the mid portion of the motor. This was pressed on kind of tight, and there was two springs that obviously are mounted to hold in the carbon brushes, which they look very short, but this is actually the correct size for the slots right there. Now this is, of course, the armature, and the commutator is down there. That's really not that bad. I'm gonna polish it, obviously, but that is not bad. So, of course, I need to access that bearing down in there, so I'm going to attempt to remove this fan, which I'm thinking it's going to be pretty tight, especially given all the rust that's on this motor. So, yeah, actually, you can kind of hear pretty dry. So, hopefully we can get this removed with good news. Well, good news, I got the vice grips, held it very tight, of course, not where the belt rides, because if you scratch it, you would do it on the part that where the belt would not ride on. But this really feels backwards. I feel like it should go in like this, but no, it goes in like this. There's a commutator. So again, pretty decent amount of build up. And just for fun, before we change the bearings, it would be interesting, this will focus, It would be interesting to pop off that cap and just see what condition the grease is in, but yeah, 608, I have plenty of those, as you can see. I actually have, I think, about 15 of those bearings. But the spin quality, I know you probably won't be able to hear. It definitely feels pretty grindy in a way. It does not feel the worst. But yeah, you can definitely tell that bearing has wear on it. And then this one, of course, about the same. Well, it spins nicely. It just has some grind to it. This is very clean. The fan inside's in great shape, so I'm going to get my bearing puller. We're going to remove both bearings. This little cap is on there. Save that. We're going to get these bearings removed, and hopefully we'll come back with good news. Okay, so I managed to remove the bearing up here. It's very corroded, and it's a good thing we're replacing it. Unfortunately, my bearing puller is having a hard time getting in between the armature or the commutator, and I'm having a hard time doing it because the bearing puller just does not quite rest in there. So I'm going to keep trying, but I also have to be careful not to damage the commutator, because obviously that won't be good at all. But at least we got this bearing off, and if we cannot remove this bearing, then I'll just repack it, because this one is worse anyways that we removed. So yeah, that's the state this motor is in right now. Let's keep working on it. Okay, so I managed to remove this bearing. Obviously it was on very tight. Now as you can see, I know where to put the new bearing, because you can see where the old bearing was, where it's still shiny. Now I had to, obviously because it was not resting on here completely because it was a bit close, I just opened up my vice grips and I gripped this really super tight so that way it would squeeze in there a little bit better while turning this, and I managed to free off the bearings. So now we can get this machine, or this motor, new bearings, and I'm also going to polish the commutator with my seating stone. So yeah. Okay, so brand new motor bearings were installed, and if you're wondering how I got them installed, because this is on very tight, I get a socket, maybe about, if you're curious with the one that I used, there's the size right there. And basically you want one that's shaped like this, because whenever you are getting this on, you don't want it to press on anywhere but the center of that metal ring. If this will focus. The center of that metal ring that this is making contact, if it is big enough to where it's touching the rubber seal or the outer part, you could damage the bearing while getting this on. So in this case, I'm going to have to add another one to make up for the spindle. And I just take my hammer while holding it tightly, and I just gently hammer it in until it lines up with the spot that it was in. So once it lined up, you know it's in. I did the same thing to this side. Exact same way. And I even polished up the commutator with my stone. Now, polishing the commutator is obviously optional. A lot of people don't do it. I do it because it makes better contact. The brushes will make better contact with the commutator, and over time, when carbon dust builds up on it, it could decrease the motor's performance over time. So this machine being 19 years old, or because the motor has been replaced, 18 years old, I do think it was a good idea to just quickly polish this down. So we're going to get the motor assembled, and we'll get the whole vacuum assembled, and we'll do a test run. It's also very important to not forget this little spring. I don't think it matters which way it goes. It's still going to have the same effect. I don't know why these motors have them. Every motor that I've taken apart has had this spring that goes over the bearing, so you don't want to forget that. And then of course our cover, which I have since cleaned off, goes over like that. And I guess the spring just kind of, the spindle, the motor itself has like a sprung loaded effect. So, and once everything is screwed together, see how smooth that is. Obviously when we get the brushes in, there's going to be more resistance, as there should be. But in the meantime, we're just going to put in our long torque screws. And of course we're going to drill these in. Of course, gotta do this with 2 hands. Just set that there. Just see how smooth that is. So now, I'm going to put the carbon brushes back in, which just slide in there. And then of course I have to do the spring. Okay, I got the motor assembled, and I don't know the size of this, because this is the only thing that actually would fit on here to where I could tighten it. Actually, it's still loose. I gotta tighten that more. Just gonna have to use my vice grips. Make sure that's tight. Okay, I put the cover on just for safety. I might take it off just to see how much the motor arcs, but honestly, this sounds pretty good. And there's no more dry motor, so that's great. Okay, all put back together. So obviously we can discard these old bearings, and yeah, the only hard part about this machine, that spring for the fold away feature popped out, and I spent a while trying to figure out where the spring went. But yeah, this thing is overall in good condition. About to run it, so let's see how this sounds. That is way better. So before, this thing actually had a long wind down, and with that long wind down, there was definitely some bearing noise. So I'd say that was a big success. So there you have it. Now, as far as the other machines I'm going to replace the bearings on, I obviously did it to this one, as it really needed it. This machine actually has pretty good bearings in it, despite its age. It still runs good. This car is kind of having the same symptoms as the Hoover, where in the end it kind of has a dry wind down, so I'm probably going to do that one. This Oric XL Classic also needs new bearings. And this Ultimate G Diamond Edition. And my Dirt Devil Breeze bagged. Probably going to replace bearings in it too. So if you have any questions, if you took this video as a how to replace the bearings video, maybe I'll put that as the title, is how to do it. But if you have any questions, just leave them down in the comments below. Thanks for watching.